Welcome to the Development Success Series. Today I have Ryan Quiring and ran his own startup. He's merged his company with another company, so he's very experienced in the funding realm. So welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Like, can you tell us about your startup story so people can know about it?
Absolutely. So I'm a electronic systems engineer by trade. Went to school thinking that I wanted to understand the physical nature of how technology functions and operates, and found out shortly after graduating that program that I'm competing against a global resource of electronic technology experts, and that there was just not a whole lot of fit for that style of expertise within. I'm in Western Canada, but even out east and into Montreal. And so I did find my spot though in control systems and automation. And that worked really well for me because it was an abstracted application to electronics. And it wasn't far into that career that I had discovered safety, functional safety specifically. So I became a functional safety engineer where I would analyze risk in an operation and not just qualify, but quantify that risk so that we could properly address it and reduce it, which then inevitably brought me to occupational health and safety, founding of Safety Tech, where we created a software as a service applications, beginning as a web app, would help with creating all of the workers within an environment, within a workforce, into sensors, is what the best way that I put it, where that data would all feed up into a dashboard, a human machine interface or a user interface, now web technology. And people management would be able to drive decision making, see alarms, approach the human workforce as similar to a machine, similar to a piece of equipment in a facility, which is what the most optimum way to do things happen to be with automation systems just in general. And so there had a lot of lessons learned around the difference between developing a to something like in a project environment. An end user approached you with a problem, you develop the project, they sign off on it, and you deliver it and they're happy, and then you move on to the next project. I had to flip it on its head a bit, where we developed a solution to a problem that people didn't want to acknowledge existed. And so you had to then inform them that they had a problem, but then you're also delivering the solution to them. So there was quite a unique experience, quite a unique finding.
Yeah, it must be hard. Have to educate and then give them your service.
Yeah, it's much different because you got to catch people up. They're not where you are when you're developing these solutions.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, one thing I hear a lot of startups say is, hey, we just need funding. If we just get funding, we can make it. But realistically, when do they actually need funds and when's the best chance they can get funds?
Yeah, so this is nuanced in the sense that it really depends on what category you fall in. The reason technology startups and software specifically need funding is because the subscription model requires you to burn cash to acquire enough users to create a sustainable growth trajectory, which is exponential. You're just adding database lines into a system to service another $10,000 customer or another $25,000 customer or another $2,000 customer, right? But there's a lot of things that impact your ability to acquire clients. And that's where the funding comes in, is you're expected to burn money to get a break-even point so that you can then burn more money, accelerate that growth. Because ideally, the novelty of your solution is not going to stick around forever. Develop the thing, you have a grace period where other people catch up with you or other competitors be built out, or you'll discover other competitors, and then you'll be constantly chasing and chasing. And in order for you to grab that traction, kind of like Uber did early on, is to raise the financing and just overpower, out generate noise from your competition.
Oh, okay. So leveling the playing field. Everyone's already starting up here. You're down here. Bootstrapping can only get you so far before you need the cash or you can't even play on the same playing field.
Yeah, you will never acquire the users needed to start generating. It's not just revenue, but profit. Inevitably, the life cycles can be 10 years or something like that. From inception to exit in a typical software as a service company, you will never get to that 10-year exit mark. You can't identify or show some sort of path to profitability. And there's tons of these companies that exist today that go public, and they use public funding to maintain their operation, similar to Uber, who they haven't generated a profit yet at this point, but they have a way to if they need to.
So if your startup's already generating profit, you still consider getting funding? I think it's depending on how far you want to grow your company.
Yes. So there's a few factors to consider before even thinking about raising capital and where you should raise capital from. There are multiple funding sources. There's non-dilutive capital, banks and lenders against revenue. You can leverage your revenue if you have enough of it. And if it's reliable enough, we'll give you a multiple on that. But it doesn't take any ownership off your cap table.
Yeah.
And you can grow. There's government financing where you can apply and leverage money in the bank against a Canadian institution similar to, like, there's the Sustainability Fund, and there's IRAP, and there's Economic Diversification, Economic Development Canada, all support business efforts to generate revenue and import that money into Canada. And in the States, there's similar economic development solutions and funding apparatuses, depending on the state that you happen to be in. So all of that is dependent on what you're trying to accomplish. If you have an app and it's a consumer app, for example, is there a $2 to $3 billion market available? Because if there's not, then don't even attempt to go venture capital, because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for a $100 million total available market, a TAM. So you have your TAM, your SOM, and your TAM, SAM, SOM, your total available market, your serviceable market, and then your ideal market subset. So they're all broken down. It look like a funnel when you lay it all out. So if I have this app and it's going to service 25,000 people to help them with removing dog poop from their lawn, then how much do I need to charge? Like, how many people want this app? How much would I need to charge in order to hit that $2 to $3 billion total available market in just Canada or just North America, depending on who you can service and how you can service them? And then what's the willingness to pay for that solution at that mark? So it's $3 billion divided by 25,000. You'll get a big number that probably nobody's going to pay for that service because it's not that big of a value add. But you can start to think about how you can monetize and price, iterate. Maybe you got to solve a bit bigger problem or show a pathway to a larger problem through this entry point. Right? So that if you don't have that in mind, the investment opportunity is too small for venture capital. It's not too small for private equity. So private equity can come in because they're not looking for 100 times growth on an investment.
Yeah.
They don't need unicorns. They look for sustainable 10, 20, 30% growth year over year profit. Totally cool as well. But they're going to take a lot more of your company because they bring a different mindset to the organization. Whereas venture capital will value your company at, say, 6 to 10x revenue based on your growth metrics, because the potential for future growth to hit the TAM is pretty significant. The probability is higher. But private equity is going to look at your EBITDA, so your earnings before interest and tax.
Yes.
And they're going to look at a multiple on that. So usually like 3-4 multiple versus 6 times multiple on revenue. And that's a difference when people go private equity. And so it's a completely different pitch and a different mindset.
So could you go private equity? Whenever I hear private equity, I always think my company is stagnating. I just want to get out, and then they would come in and buy you out. So you think if you're a growing company, they may still actually invest in you to grow? Yeah.
And it depends on the firm, right? So there's so much family money out there, but there's no one size fits all. It's all about just finding a way around it. And a lot of companies will start out with a lot of private equity. We'll start out with a minority shareholder, and then they'll just grow it until your exit.
Okay.
Or they'll do a roll up. So they'll find another couple companies like you.
And merge.
They'll attach you all together. So your role may shift and other things like that too. So it depends on what your attachment is to the role within the company that you play.
Okay. Then the next step after that is there's seed round funding, there's A round, B, C, D, and onward. You can explain the difference between the seed and A round versus the rest, and how should they approach it when they're doing those rounds of funding?
Yeah. So seed means you have you have some traction, you have some early adopters of your technology growing. You're figuring out where your product market fit is. Product market fit is something bigger than you solving the problem. Is your price points in line with your client's expectations? Is their willingness to pay? Is your onboarding strategy, say it's a B2B application in the enterprise world, if I'm paying $2,000 for something, or $1,200, like a Calendly, something like that, it should be just fully automated onboarding. There shouldn't be this really slow human interaction training sessions. That's more enterprisey. So it's in line higher lined up with the price point that an enterprise company would pay for software like SAP, something to that effect. So really making sure that your product market fit lines up and you understand your niche. Then you have a way to get to Series A, to get a reliable growth rate, to get a reliable acquisition time and a reliable payback period on acquiring your client, because you're going to be spending money on marketing, and you're going to be spending money on sales, you're going to be spending money on onboarding. When you break out all of that money, how much money do you need to spend per customer that wants to talk to you, or per prospect that wants to talk to you? And what are your conversion rates? Because that's going to determine your cost of acquisition.
Yeah.
So if you're spending $5,000 to acquire a customer and you're charging $2,000 for your service, you're just losing money. Unit economics don't make any sense anymore. And you should rethink. So you do not have product market fit.
Yeah.
But if you're paying $5,000 to acquire a customer and they're paying you $15,000 up front to start using your software, well, your payback period's immediate, and now you have a flywheel.
Yes.
And if your acquisition channels are through marketing, through automatic kind of pulls in, you can just you can spend more money there with consistency, generate more leads. It's not spotty. And so with seed, you're in this part where you have a hypothesis of what I need to do is this to prove that these metrics are sustainable. And then I can hit this 15% month over month growth or 10% month over month growth next 6 months if I have this money. Then from the VC world, they'll see the future and they'll see where Series A is going to line up. They've already predicted this based on revenue numbers and acquisition timeframes, sales pipeline timelines. And then they'll be able to set themselves up Series A. Series A is when you've proven that. You know it. You see it in the rearview mirror. You see the last 2 quarters where you've had 10% month over month growth, north of $1 million or approaching $1 million in annual recurring revenue, subscription revenue. And you're acquiring clients faster and more repeatable than you ever have. Those metrics just speak for themselves at that point. It's a different pitch at Series A than it is seed. Seed, you're pitching your passion and the investment opportunity. And in Series A, you're showing them your performance.
Okay.
And then how are we going to continue? How do we continue this trend up?
Okay. Then Series B.
Yeah, so Series B should be planned at Series A because it's the grander vision, right? Okay, we accomplished our seed goals, right? But that shouldn't be the end all be all at that point in time. If you're going down this trajectory, it should be, we need to do this to prove that this problem is viable and is real from the market that we're trying to penetrate. Once that's proven, you start to solve bigger problems for them. More money. So the focus is like upselling, good client experience, clients account management style of growth versus just purely marketing spend, because nothing's ever done. There's always going to be iterations, and there's always going to be integration partners where you can solve bigger problems with other people who are solving big problems as well. Like in safety, for as an example, high risk industries, they don't just use HR software. They use HR software and project management software and hopefully safety software and like equipment management software and inventory and time tracking and payroll. So in your silo, you're solving a big problem, but then what does that turn into? And what's the upsell if we were to pull timesheet data into the safety application and integrate those two, get them bi-directional bridge, communicating back and forth? And what does that look like then for project management? And so you start to solve bigger problems, which lean into the grandiose vision. I think coming at the grandiose vision, starting with your solution statement and then doing the yes and approach.
Yeah.
That's accurate. Yes. And then what? And then what? And then what? And then what? And how far can you go in that vision to set the North Star of what problem you should be attempting to solve? And validate all those pieces with your client base by asking them. So hey, we're solving this problem for you. How are you finding? What does your life look like today? What other problems are you faced with today? This is taking care of this thing. What's the next thing now that's urgent on your plate that you would like to have solved that's keeping you up at night? And does that align with the yes and you start validating these ideas that people actually want this stuff.
Yes.
And then that's social proof, because now you go to the investors and you say, okay, here's the product pipeline, looks like this because we have 1,000 companies using this system and 25% of them said that they all could use this secondary function and that they would pay another $5,000 per year to solve that.
Yeah.
So we're going to increase our annual contract value. We're going to increase our revenue through expansion. So there's that growth rate there. And then if these 25% are actually identifying this, chances are the rest of them are very similar as well. They just aren't aware yet. So when we do it, we'll be able to go back to them and get a percentage of them to come on board as well.
So showing the growth rate is continuing in each series. I just need this funding. This is my growth rate. We'll hit there.
Yeah.
And you repeat again for Series C, right? And
yeah, because at that point, it's about brand awareness and recognition and having a critical mass of people using your software that you can make larger holistic impacts to the workforce or to the consumer or to a different city or international expansion. That's what those Series B, Cs are really for.
So at some point, I've heard someone go to H. What happens when they get to that point? Is it
at that point? It's still a private company, but the initial investors have all been bought out, right?
Oh, okay.
Your seed investors doesn't stick around till Series H or even D. Usually they're bought out way sooner. Series A guys, depending on the fund size, aren't likely to participate anymore. They'll just get diluted out at that stage. So a lot of that funding is used to pay out cap table because these Series H or Series D VCs have either expertise in going public or expertise in or have relationships with private equity to just hand over. So the exit strategy becomes built in to that funding round. So it's really unique in the situation specifically, but normally founders are so diluted at that point. They don't own the portion of the company anymore.
So usually at which series round do they like get diluted badly? It's almost like the company is its own entity and it's just running by itself.
That's A.
After A, that's usually the case.
A, the company should no longer be dependent on the founders to function.
No, but in terms of like diluting the founders, I'm saying, like at what point do they almost completely lose control? Like,
so you do your initial angel funding. So you'll go to friends and family to get like your 25 grand or whatever to start building something.
Yeah.
And that'll dilute you like 10, 12.5%.
Yeah.
Somewhere there.
Yeah.
So your valuation is less than $1 million kind of thing. Nothing exists. It's vapor. And then you'll do like your pre-seed and that'll dilute you 10-15%, but it also dilutes the whole cap table. So your initial angels will be diluted as well. And then you'll do seed, which is 15-20%. Anything more than that, it's probably a little bit unusual. And so by that time, the founders still own more than half because everyone's being diluted down. And then at Series A, things change because that's anywhere from 25 to 40% dilution. By the book, it can be more or less depending on there's exceptions to all of these rules.
Yeah, of
these
course.
kind of rule of thumb, right? But it's not really ordinary to have a VC come in at 40% at Series A. Depending on how much they believe in the vision and how much your valuation depends on future growth versus what you're doing today. So if you need like resources to enable future growth, you dip down on your valuation because that's a test. It's not validated. We need to test it and figure out if that's the thing that's true. And you got to sell that story. But yeah, so then you're 40% there. So now the founders are minority shareholders at this point, relatively similar to where your initial investors are sitting as well. And they can top up and protect themselves from dilution as these rounds are going as well, just to maintain their share, their percentage. But then Series A, Series B is where you start. There's a transition at Series A from startup CEO to CEO. Yeah. And it's different objective. You're a different role. You're a different person than you were before. And that's a really hard pill to swallow because you're not needed anymore. A new CEO can be installed.
And the company should work properly.
Yeah. And that's what's giving you the value. That's what's the valuable part is that this is now there's people installed and they're all doing their things, right? And if one thing breaks, it can be remedied and without the company tanking. So that's why you're worth as much as you are at that stage in the company, is because it's not dependent on what's in your brain as a founder. And some founders can make that transition into actual CEO,
Yeah.
and some can't. It's totally fine. There's not anything right or wrong. It just is. And then series B and C and D are all really just prepping you for an exit.
Acquired or
Yeah.
IPO or private equity to take you over.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's
like in the ideal situation, then if you want to just keep running the company, you don't want to get to Series A. Then if you could get away at seed and have enough money, then you have enough control and all that.
If you're wanting control, I wouldn't raise money.
Oh, you
Because
would.
no, because at that point in time, nobody gives you money into perpetuity.
Yeah.
There's an exit at some point, and they recognize the 10-year duration of an investment. So they know the long game, but if you never plan on exiting, you'll probably make your shareholders not happy.
Yes.
At that point, I wouldn't raise money. If you want to do this for the rest of your life, if this is that's a lifestyle business, then it's
Yes.
it's not a venture capital or a fundable company. Besides loans. Take loans out if that's your goal, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think for me, going the venture capital route was a very big experience of learning the different language that you had to speak between your customers, between your employees, between your peer groups, between the investors and shareholders. It's just completely different level of language.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to ask you about. Was like, what's something people don't realize about the fundraising process?
Yeah. Lots of founders, myself included in my early days, lots of founders don't know that the VCs don't care about your product.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care about your problem. They don't care about your solution. What is the investment opportunity? And if they start diving into problem and solution, it's because they want to understand that you understand it, right? So they're going to ask you some maybe triggering questions, or what they think is a triggering question, to see if you, one, understand the question. It's a test of language. Can I communicate myself very well or effectively? And then if you don't know how to answer something, that's not a testament to you not understanding the problem solution. It's just a gap that they're keen on, because they were probably, something happened where that became important to them. And so they're now pushing that onto you to see how you would respond. And I think a lot of people can get triggered and get defensive or think that they don't know anymore. And it's not a judgment, it's just something you need to do. So really spinning it back to the investment opportunity. Look, here's what we're doing. Here's what's happening.
Yeah.
Here's what we identified as the gap in the market. Here's what we identified as where we would fit in as a solution. Here's why this trend is occurring today. And why I'm poised as a founder, why I'm poised to be the person who can solve it. Because it's not just me. I have this amazing network of people and partners and teammates that are all experts. They're the best at doing the thing that they do with me in this organization. And we are going to be the ones to solve this problem, because we get all of these risk factors and we get them all really well. We understand. Here's what that looks like then. If you come in today, here's what this is going to look like when we use money. Here's the plan. We're gonna payroll is one of the biggest expenses. So you're gonna hire 7 people, and they're gonna play these roles, and they're gonna move the needle in this way, and we'll start to dominate the market so that we can raise more money to then continue this trajectory and expand upon it and grow our market share even more.
Yeah.
And then you position it in such a way like that, so that when they ask a seemingly out of context or out of touch question, it's more about, well, I don't see how that's important. I don't know, to tell you the truth. I don't know the answer to your question, but I don't see how it's important, because look, if you want an answer, I'll take this back and get you the answer later. But here's why I'm here.
Yeah. Okay.
If I needed you to validate my problem statement, then I would have come to you much sooner before. So just about kind of confidence and knowing that you're the person, a founder is a unique position in a company, because you wear so many hats. You're such a generalist, and you have to excel above average in everything.
Yes.
In order to appropriately meet the demands that exist out there. And so I think we imposter syndrome is real and negative self-talk is a real thing, but it's not accurate. It's not an accurate picture of reality. The things that you're doing as a founder are beyond what anyone else can do within the problem solution statement that you're identifying. And I think we don't give ourselves the benefit of the doubt a lot of times.
Yeah, that makes sense. How about like time commitment? I've heard fundraising is a full-time job on top of your CEO duties. So how was that process when you were doing it?
Yeah. When you're a founder, you're working in the business a lot of times because you're the only person. You're the human capital necessary to move the needle to progress your vision forward. But when you're fundraising, you're working on the business. And I would say you probably can't work in the business. The second you start working in the business, you really narrow your vision to whatever the hurdle is that you need to overcome in the business. And as soon as you do that, you lose your visionary piece that you require in order to pitch to an investor. It's this really delicate balance. And the reason it's a full-time job isn't necessarily that you're that busy, but it's that you need to be in that mindset.
Oh, okay.
To be successful in delivering a pitch, because if you're manning the support desk or like monitoring the support desk and then go into an investment pitch, now you just set your intention to be only hearing from customers who are having problems. And now you enter that desk or that room, Zoom or whatever, with that intention that just got delivered onto you. And you got to get out of that. Whereas if you're just spending time working on your vision and like improving upon it and rehearsing how you speak about it and identifying why investors care, why they should care about this, then you're in the right mindset that you can show up as a visionary that you need.
Oh, okay. The next important part about the fundraising process is the pitch deck. So how important and how would you go about constructing the pitch deck at a high level?
There's tons of templates out there. There's the 10 slide template, there's the storyboard template, and there's all of these like directions. And I think they're all just jumping off points. But I think everything's storytelling.
Yes.
And so your pitch deck takes your inner world and brings it to life for an investor. And so it's one of the most important pieces of your storytelling. Think of it like a Marvel movie, but without the budget. So imagine going and experiencing a Marvel movie without CG and without green screen. And just how would you feel watching that? Not great. It wouldn't be very entertaining. Probably not going to watch another one.
Yeah.
But when they put the time and effort and energy into creating the theatrical elements that draw you in, graphics, all of that polish, you're in that world. Now you've inserted yourself in that world. That's what the pitch deck is, that supplementary piece to your storytelling, your ability to tell that story. And the more engaging you make it, and the more intriguing and the more, I don't want to use the word mysterious or mystique, but I think polished and the reason I don't want to use mysterious is that there's nothing mysterious about it. You're just telling things out, but it's that level of curiosity that you want to instigate within an investor or within somebody who's watching your pitch. And that's what the deck facilitates. So it's so important. And it doesn't really matter if you do the 10 slide deck or the story style deck, which can be like 22, 25 slides, as long as you can condense it into a 10-minute, 15-minute, 10-minute presentation. But it's your entry point in a lot of cases. A lot of VCs judge you based off of how polished your deck is. And if it's not, they just assume the rest of it's garbage. Just like you would watching a Marvel movie without all the polish. It's just not really interested. It's the best story in the world, but with the supporting graphics don't match, then it's just a write-off. Not to say that that there aren't gems in there. Again, there's exceptions to every single one of these rules. I'm not saying you don't have a good business if you can't do a pitch deck. I'm just saying you're gonna have a harder time because you're gonna have to prove that differently. Think of VC. They'll receive, a partner to VC will receive hundreds of pitch decks a week.
Yeah.
And obviously the ones that they're going to choose are the ones that are visually appealing because they're just flipping through, right? Like they're not understanding, they're not diving in. You have 30 seconds. It's like writing marketing copy. You have 7 words to capture somebody's attention. So you have, if you think about what you're doing, you're interrupting their mental processes so that they focus on you for longer than 7 seconds. That's what you're trying to do. So if you can do that through graphics design, do it. That's all it takes. They just have to remember you. And then when you email or follow up, they'll book in. You'll get the opportunity.
Okay, that makes sense. What are some funding horror stories that you experienced or heard from other founders when they're raising funds?
Yeah. So funding funny because as a founder, you tend to take offense when you hear no's or when somebody's not interested in pursuing more. I think there's this, people don't understand that not every VC is going to invest in you. Hardly any of them actually will. And if you look at the amount of founders to the amount of VCs, there's a very disproportionate level there. And then the founders that do get funded are a very small percentage. So it's not an easy, it's quite a daunting task, but everybody's idea is fundable. Everybody's company is fundable if you paint it in the right light and for the right reasons. So a lot of companies that I've seen and that I've worked with aren't genuinely passionate about their company or their solution. But they do want to be entrepreneurs. They want, for whatever reason, they want to be an entrepreneur. So they go and they do these things and they just assume that they should go get funding. And so they go get funding and they put this plan out there and they get through due diligence or whatever. And it turns out like that the fun part was doing the funding round, not the actual building of what you needed to do, executing on the plan. And then they fail, right? And or something doesn't align. So when you're doing something just to do it, that's usually the first instinct of stop and start to figure out what is it that I'm actually trying to accomplish here? Is it that I need this money to build an empire? Or do I want a paycheck because I've been working really hard and I'm not getting paid? Because now you've just got a job. The VC is now your boss. And you deliver to these stakeholders. Or do you just want to be an entrepreneur, right? And what does your end goal look like for there? But I think when you hide or shove down a lot of those soft signals and start to do things because you think you should be doing them, you get drawn into these crowds of people, of funders who fund people because they think they should fund them. Or you take a no and then you work and you grind and you you try to wear them down by convincing them that they should fund you. And when you do, you have a mismatch now of expectations. You have a mismatch of what you genuinely want to accomplish as an entrepreneur and what the funder funded you for. And when that happens, you get this really weird relationship where nobody's really happy. You've just set yourself up in a position that's almost guaranteed failure because you didn't honestly or authentically go about it from an authentic part of your life, part of your being, so to speak. And so when that occurs, there's just this massive chasm or gap that will inevitably bring you down and the investors along with it. And that's such a big problem. And I had an issue with this in mind where I raised money early on from people who were put on a pedestal and I wanted their buy-in. I didn't understand all of this stuff I'm talking about right now back in my earlier career or venture. But what ended up happening was there was such a disparity between our expectations that they escalated it to court. Like they actually brought me to court and I had to then battle that problem. I was faced with that problem, which took my eye off of what I wanted to accomplish. Because now I'm not running my company. Now I'm in defensive mode. Walking, trying to keep everything running. And I had amazing staff. And I still do. And like they did such great work while I was focused on that, keeping everything going and keeping everything rolling and continuing development and all of the things that we need to do as a company. But I wasn't involved as much. I couldn't be involved as much because I was really busy in defensive mode. And I think it was because I took money just to take money. I didn't do a character reference. I didn't align the value system that I needed with that investor. Their desires and expectations were much different than my desires and expectations. I didn't understand that at first. And so I think don't just take money to take money. That will set you up for sure for failure. Do it for the right reasons. Do it because you actually know that you need to achieve these goals in order for your solution to become viewed as industry standard or whatever your goals and aspirations happen to be. And then that is when you can raise money, because now you're not speaking from a place of fear or paralysis or how do I feed myself next month. You're coming from a part of your being that is more childlike in the sense of like authentic and fun, and seeing the future and how you're going to accomplish it is super fun. That's the best part of fundraising, is being able to play that game out, play that role out. But that's one horror story. There's so many others where I've seen term sheets from companies, from VC, especially in the Canadian market, where they just don't quite get tech as much.
Yeah.
Where the VC wanted to take half the company. And I laughed, because I was like, what? Why would you do that? You don't want the company as a VC. You don't want to operate this thing. What's keeping me as a founder engaged in building this thing at a discounted salary? Like, my sweat equity is what I'm working on.
Yeah.
So if you take that all, you just bought me out. That's what you did.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing to keep me engaged. So diluting yourself too much early on is a sure sign that the investor is a bad fit, not that you're not worth enough. So there's these signals that I think I've been able to uncover, that it's different. People tell you things all the time, right?
Yes.
Sometimes it doesn't resonate. Sometimes it does. Sometimes something has to happen in order for it to resonate. But like, I hear one of the biggest questions around fundraising is, how do you get the valuation you need to execute your plan without diluting yourself too much? And the question is not so much how do you get the valuation you need, is about how do you get the investor to realize the value? Because if they do, then valuation is never a concern. If there's a sophisticated enough investor that understand your vision and understand how you're going to get there, the valuation is irrelevant. They know the dilution model. They know all this stuff. They know what their internal rate of return needs to be on their portfolio or their companies. They have 10 or 12 companies, and they need one of them to be a unicorn to make that whole cohort worthwhile.
Yeah.
So they know all these things. They all know all the math, all of the stuff in their model. It's just now they're looking at you and seeing how you fit into that.
Yes.
So they're not going to try to nickel and dime you on value. If you're raising 2 million on 10, for example, or if you're raising 8 million on 30, about $30 post money, they're going to be like, yeah, we see the opportunity. We're going to give you 2 million, and we're assuming we're going to dilute you 20%. That's just baked into the structure. So one sure sign that a VC is trying to either say no, but they don't want to say no, or they want to take advantage, or they're going to be a problem in the future, is if they start worrying about your valuation too early on.
Oh, okay.
Because that same investor that caused me so much grief was the one bugging me about valuation.
Oh, okay.
That's hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
But I got a piece of advice when I was earlier on in my career from Jordan Bosch, the CEO of 7 Shifts. And I was asking him, like, how are you getting, I said 20,000 monthly recurring revenue. I was like, how are you getting $2 million to $4 million valuation caps when you raise money? And he goes, well, I don't know, 20 million or 20,000 MRR. Yeah. 2 to 4 million, 5 million even. That's a reasonable cap. He goes, if you have investors bugging you about that, they're the wrong investor. Ignore them. And I didn't take that to heart. I heard it, but I didn't understand what it meant until later.
That makes sense. So what are some ways you can avoid dilution?
Yeah, in Canada, we have this amazing support system for research and development. We have these funding opportunities that don't exist anywhere else in the world. There's also accelerator and incubator programs that will fund companies and set you up. Y Combinator. And I did Alchemist when I went through. And so they took 5%, but they also gave me $80,000 in Canadian equivalents. But then you plug into this vast VC network of people, which just start to shortlist your entire journey. It accelerates your whole journey. It's not just like a technology acceleration. It's a Stanford engineering or a Stanford entrepreneurship course condensed into 6 months and applied to your business in real. It's that big. And Y Combinator is the same thing for like more consumer facing applications. Some B2B stuff gets in there too, but those are ways to think about building your company and funding yourself. But there's BDCs super lenient when it comes to borrowing money. You do need some historical financials though before you can get approved there. Other than that, there's the federal government grants are super easy to get. Like they'll work with you. But I'd say like you should really be plugging yourself into network of other startup founders that can help you, that have done this or have the connections that you can be intro to. So really early on in my journey here, founded the company in 2014, went to market 2015, and I was like, geez, I know nothing about running a business. I know how to run consulting companies where I'm invoicing and collecting, but that's I'm not marketing or doing any of that stuff. Going to events like entrepreneurship meetups or Futurepreneur, or I don't know, it doesn't matter. Go get the word out and connect with people who know more people and talk about what you're doing. And don't be scared to talk about what you're doing. And nobody's going to steal your idea. I think people have this idea that they have to keep their stuff under wraps for fear of somebody else doing it. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
We're all doing our own thing. Talk about it. The more you talk about what you're doing, more people are capable of helping. That's more likely the case, right? If you run into some idiot who's trying to steal your idea, they're going to do it way worse than you because they're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
So just know that. But yeah, go and find out where your entrepreneurship network exists within whatever location you happen to be, and then find some online. There's these really cool networking sites. I can't remember this one that's just connects you with a random person globally.
Oh, Lunch Club.
Yeah, Lunch Club. Yeah. And you just talk to people, learn what they do, why they're doing it. You talk about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and who knows what can happen. I'll have a lot of misses, sure, great. You'll learn a lot about a lot of people, but there's these connections that occur. They're called collisions, and you'll just explode from there. And that's so cool to see.
Oh, okay, cool. So if people want to get in touch with you, how should they go about that?
Yeah. So LinkedIn, Ryan Quiring, connect with me there, send me an email or a LinkedIn message or something like that. And more than happy to connect. But other than that, follow my startups. I have safetyevolution.com, is the company that I exited to recently here, that I'm working as their chief strategy officer now. And then I have Bogey Golf, bogey.golf.
For more information on how to put technology to work in your business, please subscribe to this channel.